Welcome, everyone. I'm Mayor Mike, and this is Talking Point. My guest at this episode is our City Clerk, John Moe. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I thought it was important because we've got a primary election coming up August 9th. So I thought it would be a good idea to have you on, since you are responsible really for all of the elections that go on in the city. So I want to talk about that a little bit. August 9th is a partisan primary.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what a partisan primary is? What does that mean?
Sure. A partisan primary is an election where it's for the party to choose their candidates for the November election. So you'll have on this ballot, it's going to be a two-sided ballot. You'll have the Republicans, the Democratic Party, you'll have the Wisconsin Greens, you'll have the Constitutional Party, and even the Libertarians will be on the ballot.
Okay.
So when individuals get their ballot, because Wisconsin, we do things a little differently. We don't want people to know your preference. Other states, you have to, when you register, you have to choose a party to belong to. In Wisconsin, we believe that that's your own business. And so you get a ballot that has all of these parties on one ballot, and you choose the party, and then you find them on the ballot, and then you go through that party only and select your nominees, the people that you want to see represent your party in the November election for that particular office.
Okay, so I have to declare which party I'm voting for at the very beginning of the ballot, and I can't cross over.
You cannot cross over, correct. At the very beginning, they'll have the instruction section, and then right below it, they'll ask you to select your party that you want to be in. You don't necessarily have to mark that party, but it protects your votes down below. So if you were to say you were voting on the Republican ticket, if you were marking your ballot for the Republicans and you accidentally, as you were handing in the paper, your pen struck an oval next to another party's candidate. If you didn't protect yourself by identifying your party at the beginning, then the machine will not be able to tell what's your preference. And so then your ballot will be rejected.
Wow. And will I know that?
If you're voting on election day, the machine will sound and it will spit the ballot back out. But if you're an absentee voter, it won't. And so then it will be brought back to the election officials to determine if they can make an informed decision on what your true intent was.
Okay. Yeah, that seems a little confusing. So what you're saying is I have to choose a party at the beginning. I should identify it, but I don't have to.
Correct.
And if I want to vote for say a libertarian candidate for, let's hypothetically say the presidency, but I want to vote for a Democratic candidate for county treasurer, I can't do both. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. You cannot do both. You got to choose a party and stick with it. Now, come November, you can vote cross the line as much as you want. Okay.
All right. So what are things that people would know? I know that there's some new registration laws. There's some voter ID requirements. When well, first of all, let's talk about this. Absentee in-person voting is available right now at your office. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
If I wanted to do that, what would I do?
Sure. It's quite simple. You have two choices right now. You can come into your municipal clerk office. If you live in a township, let's say, you can call your clerk. They might have specific hours. Sometimes they work out of their house. Sometimes they actually work in the town hall. But for those that reside in the city, just come down to the city clerk's office. You can request an absentee. You'll actually have to fill out a little application, and that's a little different, and I'll touch base on that in a second here. Just fill out an application for an absentee ballot. Show us your ID, and you can get your ballot right then and vote. You'll stick it inside an envelope. That envelope will then be secured in my office until election day. It'll then be transported to your polling place and then counted on election day. Your second choice is that you can call your municipal clerk and actually either call or email or send a letter requesting an absentee ballot be mailed to you. Again, in those situations, if you're not indefinitely confined, again, you still need to provide some proof of identity, but then the ballot would be mailed to you. And as long as, for this election only, they've changed the rules for November, but for August, if the ballot, as long as it's received by election day, as long as it's postmarked by election day, and we receive it within that week, it will be counted at the canvass.
Okay. So we call it absentee voting. What are the conditions? What do I need to qualify for to vote absentee? Do I have to be out of town during election day? Do I have to be incapacitated in some way?
You bet. It used to be that way. You'd actually have to have a specific reason for not being able to go and vote on election day. Wisconsin changed that rule. So, I mean, it could be as simple as, you know what, I don't want to stand in line. I don't know what my schedule is going to be next week. And so I'm going to go in and try and vote early, plain and simple. The rules are a little different between absentee voting versus early voting. People sometimes get that confused, especially people that come from other states. In other states, the true early voting is you go in, you state your name out loud, they actually find the poll book that you're in, they give you a voter number, you mark your ballot, and you actually stick it into a voting machine. Mm-hmm. Here in Wisconsin, with our absentee voting, you've got to come in, you have to fill out the application, so it's going to take a little longer. You'll then get your ballot. It's then, like I said before, it's sealed in an envelope and then kept secured in the clerk's office until election day when it's deposited at the polling places.
And it would go to your normal polling place. So
correct.
I vote in the 4th district. If I came in and did early or absentee voting in your office today, it would be sealed and then turned over to the 4th district polling place under security to be counted at the end of the voting day in August, right? Okay. So basically, you don't need a reason to vote early or absentee, and they can do that from your office. Now, if they wanted to request an absentee ballot be mailed to them, what's your phone number or email address that they could contact?
Sure. The clerk's office, the main line is 715-346-1572. They can also try 715-346-1569. Okay. So there's 2 numbers. Or they can just email me, and my email is pretty simple. It's just JMOE, the @ StevensPoint, one word, .com.
Okay, great. And they could probably find you too if they go to stevenspoint.com, go to the departments, either voting or clerk. I think the actual website for voting information is stevenspoint.com/voting. We also have it available on the mobile app. Now, where it gets a little hairier, if you are not registered early, let me give you a pointer there too. To register to vote early, to register to vote prior to voting day, what's required?
Okay, so within that 20 days before the election, you have the option of coming into the clerk's office and and registering to vote. And at that time, you actually have to provide some proof of identification. Okay. That window before that, before the 28 days, we have special registration deputies that can come out and help you. They sometimes are setting up at different sites, and you can.
I know I've seen them on campus.
They can help you register to vote. But the 20 days prior to the election, ending the Friday before the election, okay, you can register at the city clerk's office or your municipal clerk's office. And we have different hours, so they should contact the municipal clerk to see which their hours are. But again, to register, you would have to provide your proof of residence.
Can you give me some examples of what proof of residence is? Is junk mail good enough? I mean, I get credit card offers, that doesn't count. How about a lease?
A lease is a great example. If it's a residential lease, you could use that. Utility bills, gas, electric, even your cell phone bill.
Cell phone bill, okay. Landline bills.
Yep.
Internet service bills.
Yep. Stuff like that. Utility bills. A credit card bill is not acceptable.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
But a bank statement would be, or credit, if you're a credit union, your monthly statement, that would be acceptable. Your driver's license, perfect to use, and also
military ID, passports.
That would be acceptable for proof of identity. Okay. So for registering, you've got to first deal with proof of residence. So something, any kind of a written document from like the city or something like that. Anything from a unit of government, any kind of communication through them. And again, with certain bills like your utility bills, it doesn't even necessarily have to be paper form.
Okay.
You can pull it up on your smartphone. If you can do that, that's acceptable, as long as the people at the clerk's office can, based on how you maneuver it on the screen, that they can find all the information they need to ensure that this is proof of residence.
Yeah, because a lot of people pay their bills online now, so they don't even get paper statements. Let me ask you this. Say I don't have a copy of my lease, I forget to bring a utility bill. Would an email from my landlord be sufficient?
No. Nope.
Okay.
It's got to be a little more specific than something like that.
And it seems to me that that's probably the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people is what is an acceptable form of proof. Excuse me. And that's really why I wanted to clarify that, because I see a lot of different things come in. But also knowing that you can bring up a bill online, that's helpful. But credit card bills are not acceptable. Bank statements are.
Correct.
So let's say I would log into my First Bank of Stevens Point account, and it showed my address on there. Would that be good enough? It's not technically a statement.
That's a very good question. I would assume that it has to be a statement in which it has your full name and your current address from them with your account number on it.
Okay.
That documentation would be acceptable.
Good, good. All right, so we can register early at your office.
Until that Friday before.
Until the Friday before. We are already within that 20-day window, so outside registration, say at the university, that's done. But you could still do it after the August election for the November election?
You betcha.
Okay, and I'm sure there's a listing somewhere of places that they have it. I know they do it on campus pretty frequently. So let's go a little bit further. It is now August 9th, and I decide that I want to go vote on my lunch hour. How do I know where I can go vote?
Sure, simple. You can either contact your municipal clerk. If you are a resident of the city of Stevens Point, you can contact your municipal clerk's office. We can tell you. It's also on our website. You can go to the Stevens Point website and track it that way.
And the mobile app.
And the mobile app. So there's plenty of ways for you to be able to track down.
Okay, so and I've used this. It's a rhetorical question for me, but so I go to the website, I punch in my address, and it tells me my polling place.
Correct.
Are all of the polling places in the respective districts? So if I'm in District 4, is my polling place always going to be in District 4, or do you have polling places in other districts? What I'm getting at is we have our temporary polling places where we may not have a spot in the 5th district, so it would be
whenever we
that.
make those changes, it's automatically put into the system.
Okay.
So right now, we're going to keep the same polling places that we had in April.
Okay.
And we'll also most likely keep them for November because we don't want any confusion whatsoever.
Sure.
And if people do have questions, and you bring up a good point too, for those that haven't voted for a while. Let's say the last time they voted was the last presidential. Mm-hmm. State law, they purge the system every 2 years.
Wow.
Going back 4 years. And so if you haven't voted for a while, I would truly recommend that you either contact your municipal clerk just to make sure to track down what your registration status is. Also, you should think about too, since the last time I voted, have I moved? Because every time you move, you have to re-register and make sure all that information is correct. And that way you can also make sure you're at the right polling place.
Well, that's another good point. So what you're saying is if you're concerned about your registration status, contact the clerk's office.
Correct.
And again, that's 346-1572 or 346-1569.
Correct.
I'm sorry, yeah, 346-1569. Or they can contact you through the website, email. But if I'm a student, mm-hmm. Let's say I spend some of the time here going to school, but my actual parents' house or the place that I normally live is outside of, let's say, Stevens Point. How do I know where I should vote?
Sure. Wisconsin law is unique in dealing with college students. They actually have the choice to choose between their parents' residence and where they live here on campus or in the city of Stevens Point when they're at school. So it's really up to them to determine what they consider to be their residence.
Okay.
If they claim that Stevens Point is their residency, then they need to be aware that they're going to have to find some kind of documentation. And again, if you live in a house with a lot of friends, they tend to have all the bills in one person's name. Doesn't really help you if you want to try and find documentation for proof of residence. So for those students, the best thing to use is some kind of documentation from the university as to show, their enrollment.
Okay.
documentation, which would have their local address on it. And they can use that as their proof of residence.
Okay.
When they go to vote, their student ID card is not set up to be a valid proof of ID.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No, not, because there has to be so many conditions met in order to be a true proof of identification.
We're pretty close to that anyway, so why don't we talk about what's required in an ID? I'm at the polling place on August 9th. I've already determined that I'm registered. I need to show an ID or not?
That is correct.
Okay, what does the ID have to have?
The student, any ID, it has to have a picture with your face on it. It has to have your name, your current address on it, or I'm sorry, it does not. It has to have your complete name. And the guidelines are different for each kind of documentation. And I can give this to John to put it up on the TV station, but for those in the audience,
Well, they can get it on the website too, right?
they can get it on the website, but a driver's license, Wisconsin ID card, military or veterans ID card, passport are documents that can be used. Now, the student ID cards that are currently issued at the university do not meet the criteria to be a proof of identification. So they can either use their driver's license or their document.
Why doesn't it meet the requirements?
Because it doesn't, it has to have the date of issuance on it.
Okay.
It has to have the signature of the student, photo ID, expiration date, no later than 2 years after issuance dates. Plus, besides that, they'd actually have to have some kind of documentation from the university that shows that they're currently enrolled. So the current student ID card here at UW-Stevens Point doesn't meet those criteria. However, the students that find themselves that they can't find any other documentation can actually go to the university and ask them for a new ID just for voting purposes, and they'll actually reprint meeting all the conditions that I just mentioned.
Well, that's good. Good. Okay, so I'm in line. I find out I'm registered. I present my ID. What happens next?
Sure. So they'll go up to the line. Again, they'll state their name out loud. They'll give them, if they've just registered,
Okay.
they'll have to be written into the poll books.
Okay.
They'll then have to sign the poll books.
To prove that you were there?
Yes. Again, this is part of the protocol set up to ensure that someone's not trying to steal your identity.
Okay.
So they can, you'll have your signature there. You'll then be issued a voter number, and then at that time, the poll workers will initial the ballot and give you the ballot. You then go ahead and go into the voting booth and
Okay.
cast your ballot and then stick it into the machine.
Okay. What if, while I'm filling in my little ovals with the pencil or pen, that I realize, I put it on the wrong line?
Sure.
What do I do?
Happens quite a bit, and that's okay. All you have to do is go back up to the poll workers and say that you've made a mistake and you would like a new ballot. What they'll say is, okay, you need to spoil that ballot. So what they'll traditionally do is just have you fold it, tear it just a little bit, you hand it in,
Okay.
and then you'll get a new ballot. And you'll get up to 3 tries.
Okay, good. I think that would hopefully be enough for just about anybody. One thing that was always a pet peeve of my wife's when she worked there was write-ins. The rules have recently changed with write-ins. In some cases, people do it as a joke. They may put in Mickey Mouse, or they may be doing it out of silent protest. That I don't think any of them are good enough, and I'm voting for Joe Pesci.
You betcha.
Tell me the rules and why that can be really annoying for the poll workers.
Sure, they had to change the rules not too long ago to try and speed up the process at the end of the night. Just for the audience out there, at the end of the night, it's not just about printing out the results from the machine. The poll workers then have to actually take out all the ballots, and they literally have to go through each and every ballot looking for write-ins. And they have to compare it to then the printout from the voting machine and make sure that that's accurate with the number of write-ins. Now, sometimes people fill in the ovals correctly. Sometimes when they write in someone's name, they don't fill in the oval. They just write the name in. Well, then the tally sheet from the voting machine isn't going to catch that. So then they're constantly going through all the ballots and then checking off on the printout. So it takes a lot of time.
Pretty labor intensive, yes.
And when there's write-ins, then we also have to record all of those. Wisconsin law now states that you have to be a registered write-in candidate in order to be recorded, except unless there's no one on the ballot for that race,
Okay.
or a candidate that's on the ballot has passed away.
Okay.
And in those instances, then any name written in will have to be counted. So at the end of the night, they'll have to write in every single thing.
So how do I know if the candidate I'm choosing is registered as a write-in?
Sure. Candidates, again, have until that Friday before the election to declare themselves as a write-in candidate and register with the office. If it's a county office, they have to go to the county clerk. City offices to the city clerk's office. State offices and above, they have to go to the state. We'll then notify the polling places, and they'll have lists available.
Okay.
They are not posted. So if you're looking to see, well, I heard so-and-so is running as a write-in, all you have to do is ask, can I see the list of registered write-ins? And they will then provide you the list so you can check to see if your candidate is in fact a true registered write-in candidate.
I think we've covered all the bases, at least for the August primary. I know it can get really confusing and very frustrating, especially with longer lines like we're going to have in November. It really is to everyone's advantage to try and get in and get registered early, or at least have your documentation in order so your wait is a little less when you're actually at the polling place. Is there anything for the primary election that we haven't been able to cover that you might want people to know?
No, I think for the primary, I think we've pretty much covered everything.
Okay, it's a little early yet, but let's talk about things that may be a little more different or a little more challenging when it comes time for the big November election.
Sure.
So what differences are there?
Well, again, now that after we've gone through the August primary and we've now selected our candidates, obviously the interest is going to be a lot more. These will be the final decisions. Some people feel that they might not have enough information to choose a candidate from the primary group, but when it comes down to making the final decisions, they'll want to participate, which is wonderful. So there's going to be a lot more people participating. And people should really start thinking about, one, as we discussed earlier, before going to the polls, make sure that they're registered to vote. If you've moved, if you've changed your name, if it's been a while since you've last voted, contact your municipal clerk, just ask them, verify your registration status. Also kind of plan the day. It's wonderful to participate on election day, but just know if you go early in the morning, over the lunch hour, or between 3 and 5, there's going to be a lot.
People are getting off of work, those sorts of things.
So try and plan accordingly. Make sure when you go to on election day that you have your identification ready.
Okay.
And if you're not sure if you have the right kind of documentation, again, contact your municipal clerk. They can help you make sure you have the right documentation.
Okay. And again, the November election is the nonpartisan primary, so you can vote across party lines. Pretty much any candidate that you want, you can vote for. And what can we expect for a voter turnout? Let's compare and contrast typical voter turnout on a fall primary, like we're having in August, as opposed to the fall election, which we're going to have in November. Ballpark.
Oh my goodness.
Participation.
So for August, I'm assuming that we'll probably be between 8 and 15% turnout.
Call Jimmy the Greek, get the over-under on the, the turnout.
Come November, and the city of Stevens Point is always higher than the state average. I could see us easily between 60 and 70%.
Okay, wow.
Without any hesitation.
That'll give you an indication of what those lines are going to be. We've got just a few minutes left. Can you talk about what offices are going to be on the primary ballot on August 9th?
Sure. So again, in last April's election, we had the presidential preference. So that's when we were able to choose between the presidential candidates. So now in August, we'll be dealing with the other offices. You'll have U.S. Senate, Congress for the federal offices. You'll have state Senate. You'll have state assembly, and then various county offices as well.
Okay. And then those same offices would be up in November. What are the differences between spring elections and fall elections? You know, we have an election in April typically every year. what offices are set for the spring elections as opposed to the fall elections?
Sure. There's two real major groups. We'll have the partisan offices where the candidates are associated with a specific party. Those are always in the fall.
Okay.
In the spring, you'll have the nonpartisan. So you'll have offices such as mayor, alderpersons, county supervisors, county exec, Supreme Court, public instruction will be on there as well. No, that's actually, no, that's nonpartisan.
That's a spring election.
That will be in the spring.
School board.
So school board is another one that's nonpartisan, which will be in the spring election.
Okay, good. Anything else that we haven't covered in regards to the elections?
Well, the only thing I can think of, and since I have a few minutes, I got to throw this in there. The cities and a lot of municipalities out there are always looking for people that are interested in protecting their system of government. We're looking for poll workers.
Okay.
The city, we had a very wonderful turnout with the last request for people that wanted to serve. We just approved 20 people to come on. We can always use more. So if anyone out there who's interested in their government and wanting to serve in some way to their community, please consider becoming a poll worker and contact your municipal clerk.
You actually get compensated for that too, or $10 an hour, right?
In the city of Stevens Point, we pay $10 an hour, and we also pay for training.
Okay, and the training is covered. Give me an idea of what is expected of me if I want to be a poll worker, because not everybody knows what goes on. So
Sure.
Do I need special skills or what's involved in the day? I don't want to work 12 hours.
You betcha. And a lot of municipalities do shifts. The city is moving towards that direction. So we have people that work the whole day, and we have other people that just work a shift. The shifts are 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours long. But we're looking for people that obviously have an interest in their government, like I said, people that are willingness to help other people. People that can handle the workload, the stress sometimes with a lot of people in line. You got to be able to keep calm and cool under the pressure. But those are the type of people that we want helping us at the polling place.
Any specific residency requirements? Do I have to be a resident of the city of Stevens Point to work a poll in the city?
Sure. And that was the case until just this year. They've now implemented changes to that in which you can be a resident of the county, and you can submit your request to be a poll worker for any municipality in that county.
Okay. U.S. citizen? Do I have to be a U.S. citizen to be a poll worker?
Yep.
Okay. Any background checks or qualifications? I mean, do I have to be over 18? Do I have to be under 75? I'm just asking.
No, sure. For the city of Stevens Point, for all employees, we do a background check.
Okay.
For those other municipalities, that might be different because they might depend a lot more on the parties submitting individual names. But again, students 16 years or 17 years old can serve as poll workers, but traditionally, it's high school or above.
Okay.
And as long as your abilities are strong and you can take on the workload, then we'll put you in.
And what's my commitment there? I've got training sometime before the election of 2-3 hours?
For the city of Stevens Point, all new poll workers come in. There's an introduction training.
Okay.
It's usually about 2 hours.
Okay.
There's also trainings before every single election. They're usually about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half. Obviously, November is going to be more, probably about a 2-hour training. We try and get you in with a shift work for a couple elections. After a year or so, then we have you go through what they call a baseline training, which is another 3 hours of training. But again, before every single election, there's a training session that you are required to attend.
Perfect. If anyone needs any more information on voting, you can contact the city clerk's office at 715-346-1572. You can go to stevenspoint.com and look under the city clerk's office. You can go to stevenspoint.com/voting for information, or you can find information on our mobile app, which you can get through the App Store or Google Play. My guest has been John Moe, our city clerk. We've been talking elections. And until next time, I'm Mayor Mike, and you've been watching Talking Point.